What's up, guys and gals, and welcome back to the Nerd Castle. Today in the world of indie games. Well, not really an indie game. This one is actually published by Funcom. So that's kind of eyebrow-raising. I don't know, dude. I don't know if I've ever been able to forgive Funcom on any real level after Age of Conan. Tortuga was so good, and everything after that was so disappointing, and it makes my tummy hurt. But anyways, the game is not developed by Funcom, which is why we are here. This game is made by Shiro, which is the company that made Northgard, which you may remember we covered a few weeks back in its totality now that it's concluded. Dune Spice Wars is basically Northgard, but with some important things moved around, but largely the structure of the game is very, very similar. In my opinion, if you enjoyed playing Northgard, you will more than likely enjoy Dune, especially if you're a fan of the books and or movie. I have not read the books. I've seen the movie 2 or 3 times, so I have the vaguest of ideas of what's going on inside the lore. Today we're going to dive on in, take a look at the game for about 20, 30, 40 minutes, and see if it's something you wanted to add to your wish list or otherwise pass on. If after watching this you did indeed want to get involved in the early access, you can look down below in the description. I'll have a link for you down there, and then of course on the day this video goes live, we'll more than likely stream it for 3 or 4 hours on Twitch, and so you can find a link to that down below. I usually ping my Discord, which is also down below before I go live. But anyways, let's get started. As a foreword, I apologize if I mess up any of the names or I mess up any of the pronunciations or anything else like that. Like I said, never got into Dune, and so I'm really only introduced to the entire nebulous via the movie that just came out, which I watched a couple times, because it was quite good. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to pick our faction. This faction right here is House Atreides. Basically, there's an Imperium. A lot of the things in Warhammer 40k are inspired by Dune. By Dune. There is an Imperium, and there are different houses that are a part of that Imperium that take part in the Emperor's will, basically. House Atreides, they are all about chivalry and honor and duty. They are basically kind of the closest thing to good guys in this story that you're going to hear from. You've got House Harkonnen. These guys are brutal warmongers, oppressors, mass murderers. Like, these guys are all about the ends justifying the means and getting the job done, and they are quite brutal. And they are led by this guy named Vlad, although I just call him, my nickname for this guy is Bubblegum Putty Butt, because he looks like he made out of bubblegum. We've also got the Smugglers. These smugglers are basically criminals that are trying to maximize profit and chaos on Arrakis. And then you've got the Fremen, who are the natives of Arrakis, who are running kind of a resistance war, like an underground insurgency to try to run these guys off and get them off the planet so that they can fix it and turn it green. The rough storyline is that Harkonnen has been in charge of Arrakis for a while, and they haven't gotten the Fremen under control, and so the Emperor has basically given control of Arrakis over to House Atreides to get the job done, and Harkonnen, they aren't the kind of people to let grudges go like that, and so the Harkonnens are basically trying to wipe out the Atreides and, you know, take over Arrakis. The Atreides are just trying to get the place under control by defending themselves from the Harkonnens, and then also trying to either make friends or coerce the Fremen into aligning with the Empire, and meanwhile the Fremen are doing everything they can to just basically remain existent. I've played Atreides, I've played Harkonnen, I've played the Fremen. I haven't played the Smugglers yet, but that's just because I don't really have that much of an interest in them. Ultimately, Atreides and Harkonnen, they play fairly similarly. Their goal is to take over the map, and basically they can use military might to bully people around. Atreides tends to focus a little bit more on diplomacy and meeting your opponent halfway and trying to find resolution, whereas Harkonnen tends to be focused on just like, let's kill these guys. Today we're going to be playing the Fremen, because I actually kind of like the idea of being the homegrown insurgency that's holding off these off-world powers. And so I really, really like the idea of that. Plus, they can summon Shai Hulud, which is the giant sandworm, to do their bidding and, like, ride around on them, which is pretty badass, too. So we'll go with the Fremen for right now. We get a bunch of different bonuses. I'll leave you to read those. This probably won't make a whole lot of sense, given the fact that, like, a lot of these concepts and a lot of these resources and things have not been introduced to you yet until we get into the game. But the rough idea is the Fremen are much better at moving across the desert than all the other factions, because this is their home. So they can stay away from their home territory longer without problems arising. They use thumpers for worm riding. They can make alliances with other groups of Fremen that you'll find on the map. They have limited access to the Landsrad Council. The Landsrad Council is basically kind of like a planetary UN that meets like every 30 days in this game to vote on resolutions. Those resolutions can be everything from nerfing factions to imposing penalty on factions to giving buffs to factions and things like that. And everybody, based on how much land they hold, has a different amount of votes so that they can swing things in either direction. There's also espionage and kind of influence that allows you to influence the way a vote goes without having the votes to actually get it to pass. But that's not something that I've dove too deep on into yet. It hasn't been entirely super relevant in the couple hours that I've played the game. We need to pick counselors. I'm going to go with these two guys just because I know what they do real fast and I've already kind of played with them. This guy right here means that we can erect the Shai Hulud Temple, which is a building that allows us to increase our production with all neighboring territories. And then on top of that, it also reveals where all of the spice fields are, which kind of gives you a little bit of an early game boost. Over here, there is the Othame. Othame is a unit, or he's a counselor that allows your units to move faster, and then if they are fighting alone, they get fat buffs, which allow them to hold out for longer and cause more casualties to the enemy and maybe trade upwards. So anyways, let's start the game, shall we? Okay, so here we are at our first siege. I don't even know if that's how you say that word in all honesty. Or sitch. I don't know how you say it, so I apologize for my pronunciation. I am uninitiated in Frank Herbert's Dune. But anyways, this is our capital. This is where we have started out. This is what we control. This is the home point and operating area that we exist in. The map is quite large. You can make it even bigger. It is customizable, and there's a whole bunch of things you can fiddle with in order to customize your gameplay experience. Anybody that's played Northgard will probably note the similarities between these two titles because they definitely use Northgard as a blueprint for this game and then kind of modified various aspects of it to make it a little bit more Dune-like, basically. And so anyways, we have ornithopters. Ornithopters are scouts. They can reveal the fog of war on all sides of us, and they can investigate points of interest, which is very, very important because we need to find spice about as fast as possible. If you don't know what spice is and you've never seen Dune or you've never read Dune, spice is like a hallucinogenic drug that is produced in huge quantities naturally on Arrakis, and everybody wants it, basically. It's worth like a fortune, and that's why this planet, even though it's basically a barren dust ball, is being warred over, is because, like, I've always described Dune as like space cocaine machete fight. That's actually exactly how I described the movie after I saw it, and that's pretty much what it is. So the things you need to be aware of. Top left-hand corner. The first thing, we have how much spice we have that we're harvesting at the moment. This little slider right here allows you to decide how much of the spice that you're keeping for yourself in percentile versus how much you are selling to the Chom contracts, which gives you an uptick in your currency over here. This is the tithe, the Spacer Guild bribe. We've got to pay that much spice every 30 days, otherwise bad things happen. You don't want to be on these guys' bad side, so just pay the bribe. We've got our money, we've got our plascrete, we've got our manpower, we've got our water, and we've got our authority. Water and authority are used for colonizing places and taking over villages. Manpower and money are used for buying units, and then plascrete and money are used for buying buildings. There are free build buildings in this game that you can build around villages and stuff that you control that'll boost your production. This right here is your hegemony. You're trying to get 25,000 hegemony. The more hegemony you have, the closer you are to victory, effectively. This is one of the victory conditions. We've got all of our enemies over here. We've got our operations. So you can take part in clandestine operations against enemies to kind of like put them on their heels and things of that nature. We've got our research. We've got our Landsrad council votes so that we can keep a track of all the resolutions and whatnot that are going to be going up in the next vote. We've got our espionage, which allows us to mess with the other factions and get bonuses for doing various underground missions. And then we've got our units down here, which are actually fairly limited in this game. This is not a RTS where there's going to be like 600 units on screen a la Supreme Commander. This is a game where you have very limited units and you need to use them to their maximal efficiency by picking and choosing your battles in order to kind of take small patches of ground, recuperate, do it again. So let's go ahead and take this ornithopter and fly him off over here, and we will take a look at some of these neighboring territories and what they might hold. For right now, we've got 2 points of interest over here. I'd actually like to get military units going too. We've got a melee unit called a warrior. If a warrior is in combat with an enemy, they make them disoriented, which nerfs how strong they are. So we'll take one of those. We do have the money for a skirmisher right now as well. I'd probably recommend that we build one of those too. The skirmisher is ranged, And so the skirmisher is going to allow us to attack from range while these guys pin down the enemy and nerf them. They make for like a really, really nice little two-piece combo of destruction. So we found our spice field over here. We need to get this up and running as fast as possible because the tithe is going to be due very shortly. So in order to take over a spice field, you need to take over the village that's connected to that spice field. And you can always tell where a village is because it has kind of like this bedrock right here that they're using as a foundation for all of their buildings rather than building on the shifting sands of Arrakis. And so we'll go ahead and scout this thing on out. This gives us time to get some units up and running, and then we can talk about how military operations work inside the confines of the game. They're fairly simple, but there are some important dots and tittles that you need to be aware of. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen. You're going to overextend yourself, and you're going to get yourself into trouble. So now that our military units are spawning, you will see them right here, and we can actually band them together into one unified army. And you'll notice that there's 2 meters on top of each of these units. There is health, which is the green meter, and then the yellow meter underneath that, which is probably hard for you to see on YouTube. That's the amount of logistical supplies that this unit has, and so that's why the Fremen are actually pretty dope, is because their supply drain is much, much slower than every other faction, which means they can strike further, and they can overextend themselves further than the other factions can without running out of supplies. What happens when you run out of supplies? Your health starts to drain very, very, very quickly. So don't run out of supplies. That's a bad thing to do. I'm going to put this Ornithopter on auto recon for right now until I see something else that I want. And then we're going to send these melee guys into the desert, and we're going to go ahead and invade Sinlula and take over it because we need access to that spice field, and we need access to it like right now. And so we'll send these guys on into the desert. And I actually don't know where our infiltration point is going to be. I haven't told them to attack just yet, so the enemy shouldn't come out to mess with us. They do have 2 militia units here. We want our melee to go in first. And so we'll click on the building. That's going to alert them. We'll pin down their melee units first. And then once our ranged units get here, you should start to see their health go down pretty quickly. In addition, we are also getting assistance from the defense guns that are on top of our base right now. So that's going to make the situation even easier, just blasting the enemy into dust. But as you can see, our supplies are going down while we're fighting. So if you're on offense in this game, you need to be very, very sure that you can take down the enemy before your supplies dwindle and run out. Otherwise, that's going to be a very, very risky gambit for you, and it's costly to build units, and it takes you a long time to get your manpower back up. So replacing units is always kind of a costly discussion. Don't worry about that. That's just tutorial. I'm just going to click through it because I more or less know what I'm doing after playing the game for a couple hours last night. It's a pretty simple game if you've played Northgard before. Like, the general flow is very, very similar. So now that we've killed the militia around Sinlula and we've isolated and eliminated all of their units, we have the option to either pillage or we can settle this place. I'm going to settle it because we need this place in order to produce spice, and that's going to cost me 5 water, and it's going to cost me 31 of my authority. And so we're going to go ahead and do that, and after we hold the point for a minute, it will become ours. And so we want to move very quickly on this so we can get this spice operation up and going, because I'd like to balance my chome budget before we get into the next couple days of gameplay. So there we are. We now own Sinlula. It is our village. It is owned by the Fremen. There are a number of buildings that you can build. Every single village only provides you with a limited number of building slots and a limited number of militia slots. Unless you upgrade them for 100 plascrete, you can add another building slot. It adds another foundation. For right now, there's only one thing we want, and that's going to be a spice collector. And obviously, that's going to tap us out pretty aggressively on plascrete. And so this is like the one structure we need to get up and running. There is spice available. There's a harvester wreck over here. If we investigate it with an agent, which we don't have yet, you spawn agents periodically while you're playing the game, and you can assign them to different tasks. But anyways, if we infiltrate it with an agent, we get an economic development. Effectively, what that means is it just adds research points to the next economic research that's inside our tree. And in fact, we need to set one of those up right now, too, before we get behind on it. I don't really mind. Let's go for survival training, I think, because that's going to increase the amount of supply our soldiers carry by 50%, and that's going to really maximize the benefit of that minus 30% drain that we have. And so that'll be fine. And then there's always two options on a point of interest like this one right here. You can either have an agent infiltrate it, or you can have an ornithopter come through. The agent usually takes a long time, but you get something that is viable for like the rest of the campaign. Whereas if you just hit it with an ornithopter, you're basically getting a big infusion of resources one time, and you can spend those on whatever you want. And so anyways, we can get a bunch of spice from right here. I don't think we're going to need the spice because we actually got... We got ahead of the curve pretty quickly, and I think we'll be able to get 150 spice together pretty rapidly. But we are waiting on this thing to deploy. I'm going to go ahead and speed the game up. It comes in 1.5 and 2.0 flavors of time dilation. I do appreciate that feature. I'm not the kind of person that enjoys sitting around waiting for a meter to fill up. And so, like, I tend to use time dilation pretty aggressively. If you've watched my RimWorld playthroughs on Twitch and whatnot, I tend to use time dilation a lot in order to kind of speed through things because I get bored very, very easily. Our research is going well. Landsrad Council will probably be here in a couple of days. I'll kind of walk you through that process and how it works once we get there. What is that? Spice production? Yeah, I'm working on it. I don't know if that jingling noise is a part... I think it's part of the soundtrack. Okay, it sounded for a second like there was some kind of buzzer going off, and I was like, I've never heard that particular alarm noise before, so that worries me. What does that mean? I thought I was going to have to edit and adapt quickly, which definitely makes me feel anxious, but nope, just the soundtrack. There's our harvester right there, and what you'll note is that we have now put down a spice harvesting tent next to the spice fields. So the Fremen are really, really good at harvesting spice because they've been doing it for thousands of years. They harvest spice faster than pretty much everybody else. And on top of that, everybody else has to deal with a mechanic where if you harvest spice, you have a chance to awaken the sandworm. And if you awaken the sandworm, it eats your harvester, which is very, very expensive. It cost us 500 plascrete. And so anyways, the Fremen actually have it going pretty good. They don't wake up the sandworm. They just harvest freely and have a good time doing it. So we don't even need to worry about that particular mechanic. For right now, we can look at our spice budget. It looks like we are going to have 154 spice by the time the next tithe is available. That means we're going to want to kind of adjust this a little bit. There we go. 179 makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. That has lowered our budget right here, and this does actively update as you move the meter around, but we've still got enough Solari that makes me feel like we're going to be okay. The next thing that I'd like to do is hopefully our agent will come up pretty soon. We can get, what is this, an abandoned Fremen camp. This right here will increase our siege, or siege, I don't know what that word, I'm just going to call it siege from now on, okay? It increases our siege detection. That's going to allow us to find other people like us that live inside the sieges, and then we can ally with them. Or we can just swing down here and steal the plascrete from the old broken down camp, which actually is not an awful idea considering that we don't have a lot of plascrete and none of the neighboring territories have a plascrete deposit. Over here we have rare elements, but rare elements just give you money. And so while we will probably take over that, it's not immediately a huge concern. The other thing we can do is if we had 50 manpower, we could hire a crew to work inside of here, which increases its output by about 25%. Very, very useful stuff. There's another spice field over there, so actually, financially, we should be in a pretty good position during the course of this playthrough. I may start manually using the ornithopter, or maybe build another one. I don't know if we have the money to build another one. Our research is done, so we now have 50% more supplies while we're moving around the map with our infantry units. I would say that we probably want to lower the authority cost of invading towns, because we're generating authority very, very slowly. Spice production's looking good. He's finding a new village over here. I think... well, until we have an agent, there's not a whole lot that I'm going to be able to fiddle around with. Be wary of these shifting sand tiles right here. This deep desert tile. What this does is it drains your supplies like way, like hella fast. Like, you take like 2 steps into this desert and your supplies are basically run out, even if you're playing the Fremen. And so anyways, you should just consider this kind of a hard wall that keeps the enemy from getting to you, because without like considerable endgame upgrades, it's going to be tough to move across the desert in any meaningful kind of effective sense. In each of these villages, you should also take a look at the bonuses that the villages are giving you. So it's not immediately obvious, but when you click on here, there's a buff over on this side. And I think the icon indicates what kind of village it is too, because if you look, the villages have different icons on them. I haven't memorized the icons though, so just make sure you come over here and you look at the buffs that you get for owning these. And so we can have +2 research hubs as accordance. This is basically a scientific community. And then on top of that, any research hubs that we build produce even more research, so that we can basically go for like maximum technology as quick as possible. And much like playing a Civ game, a lot of the meta in this game is figuring out what you have and how you can sort of rally that into a victory for yourself. I want this guy to start scouting, actually. I need to see if there's some things around. There's a Harkonnen ornithopter. We're kind of waiting on our agents to spawn anyways, too, before we make any long-term plans about exactly what it is we want to do with this map that we've been given. We've got another village over here. It looks like our first agent has been deployed, and so this is Tinis. He is a suck doctor. I'm not even going to touch that one. The joke's too easy. Anyways, knowledge global production is increased by 1% per infiltration level. Okay. Well, I need him to be an Arrakis agent for right now, so I'm just going to do that. And the good news here is he does stack with the research bonus that we're getting from our first village as well, so that'll be really, really nice to have around. It looks like we've got another village over on this side. Ornithopter, where are you going, man? We on the edge of the map right here? We are indeed on the edge of the map. Okay, let's go upwards. Oh, in fact, we've already done all that. Ooh, we're going to have plascrete problems. Yo, we're going to have plascrete problems. Plascrete problems. We should probably invade and take over this place, just so we've got extra building space, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I need to suss this place out, though, real fast. I got to figure out exactly where it's at, and then we'll push out across the desert and go take over it. This one right here gives you fuel cells. Okay. We apparently build ceremonial caves over there. Our next research is done, which should make colonizing this place a little bit easier. We can get more knowledge production per village that we control. We can get Dune Wanderers, which lowers the water upkeep on our military units. And it looks like it lowers our supply drain, and it gives us recycling vats. Let's go ahead and do that. That sounds good. The researches do change depending on which faction you're playing. There are like universal researches, and then there are faction-specific researches as well that'll change things around, in case you were wondering. And so there is some replayability that's stocked up right there, which I'm happy to say is the case. This says we're going to have enough, right? Okay, I just want to make sure that we're going to have enough. I'd like to take over Heartless, we're going to need a bigger military. Well, we can get Harbu. And Harbu has really good wind strength, so we can use this place to harvest water, possibly. Like, we put, like, one water harvester over here and one plascrete factory over here, research hub right here, and then inside of here, a water collector, and then that thing makes us produce more fuel cells. Maybe. I don't think we use fuel cells, though. I think fuel cells are a Harkonnen Atreides thing. But I'd have to... Oh, that actually has 3 defenders. Okay, so that's not going to be crazy effective. That's going to be a little bit more difficult to take over. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we are going to have to pick up another military unit, I think. So we'll go ahead and do that before too long, because I am going to need to acquire all this. Otherwise, we're just never going to get in front of our economic woes. We're kind of playing behind the economic 8-ball right now. We were given rough tiles around us. I was hoping that we'd have a place for a really good, like, 300% output plascrete factory, but didn't go that way. That's life, and that's the way that it happens. As of right now, we are infiltrating, which is great. So we've almost got level 1 infiltration. You can rally the various levels of infiltration into bonuses and things that you can do. You can also use the intel that we're generating by having these guys infiltrated in various factions and various cultures and various areas. to do other things. So you can use these basically for like limited powers. You can poison people's supply, for example, or you can sabotage people's gear in a region, or you can get a supply drop, which refills your supply. This is effectively like magic spells, basically. They're the exact same thing as magic spells if you've ever played Northgard before. Like, very, very similar. Is there actually like a... So there's minerals right here. But I think I need some kind of outpost to get after them, but I really... Oh, no, never mind. It's shared by Fabat. Okay, we need to take this place over, like, right now. This place needs to be ours. Let's go hit them. Because that solves our problems big time. You go ahead and just auto-recon. We've already uncovered the stuff that I wanted to uncover. We'll go ahead and group up all the melee guys over here, and we're going to go hit Fabat, and we're going to take them over. You do get random events as you're playing the game where it'll ask you to decide what you want to do, and you'll get various malices and bonuses for doing that thing. Yeah, that hit our supplies kind of harder than I'd like to admit. We need to get in here and make this thing happen, like, fast. All right, so you guys pair off. You guys hit that one on the left. Does look like our unit is getting focused fired, but we're suppressing the AP. Aw, dude, are we waking up the sandworm? We are indeed. The sounds of battle have woken up the sandworm. Unfortunately, we didn't do our arrhythmic crip walk across the sand in order to keep ourselves safe. Let's just get away from it, and we'll get up on this paddock right here. We'll finish off these ranged units, and then we'll take over Fabat. And then I've got things that I would very much like to accomplish. So let's go ahead and conquer this place. We're not going to pillage it. I want it because it gives us a plascrete factory. It also gives us a pretty decent spot for us to build a water harvester, which our water is almost bottomed out right now. If we get hit by a storm, we're going to have rebellions, and so we need to be careful. Okay, so our research is done. We took over Fabat. We have Desert Mastery, minus 30% in deep deserts, and when you're in a deep desert, you are now camouflaged. We have local hubs. Let's go ahead and get local hubs to help out with our research a little bit. Fabat is ours. Let me see if I can get a... Let's start with the moisture harvester, the wind trap. We have level 5 wind in this territory, so that'll give us 15 water to fiddle around with, which is very, very nice. A raid has been detected. Yeah, but, like, what are they even doing, dude? Like, can they even get up over here? It looks like they went the wrong way, and, like, my entire army is here. Like, I think we're probably fine. Oh, they can go up that little crevasse right there? Okay, fair enough. These guys got, like... These guys got their climbing shoes on. I thought for sure that that was a wall right there. Fair enough. The enemy's been defeated. I don't know if there's veterancy bonuses. It doesn't look like there are. I would like to see veterancy bonuses added to the game where the units have like multiple stages of upgrading as they survive combats, because this is a limited unit game where you don't get a lot of unit stacks. I think something like that where you get to have like branching paths, like do you want to increase their attack power, or do you want to increase their supplies, do you want to increase their HP, or do you want to increase their movement speed? Stuff like that I feel like makes the game really fun. And so I hope they add that. We have a Landsrad Council we've got to look at. So there are 3 votes going up for resolution. There is a water regulation going up that will make water upkeep more expensive for the next 30 days. We've got troop inventories. That means our units cost 100% more for the next 30 days. And diplomatic congress means that everyone produces minus 30 influence for the next 30 days. The vote isn't up yet, but it's good to be appraised of what's coming so you can kind of make up your mind. I'll do just about anything in my power to block the water upkeep from happening, because we are, in fact, very, very low on water at the moment, and I can't deal with that. Hopefully they don't get raided over here. It might be a good idea to get us some militia to defend this. Yeah, just give me 2 swordsmen over there, just to kind of like hang out. If you're wondering why guys in a sci-fi game are using machetes to fight each other, it's because people have personal shields in Dune, and personal shields have effectively nullified most projectiles in modern military combat in the setting of Dune. And so basically everybody is like a hyper-crazy kung fu machete fighter, or like knife fighter, or like spear fighter in Dune, because Low-velocity weapons are the only thing that can get through shields. I sort of feel like you could probably come up with some kind of VSS subsonic round that would get through shields, but, like, I'm kind of nitpicky when it comes to things. We do have another agent available. We can assign them to a task, and I think that's probably a good idea. What does she do? Knowledge global production is up by 1% of infiltration level. Okay. I would suggest that we infiltrate the Chome because we need the money. Actually, we need to neutralize our manpower generation. That's what we need to do. There we go. That evened us out. We're not quite there yet, but it's better than nothing. We are maintaining a lot of military units right now, and I really only needed to take this place down, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel that out so that our manpower continues to grow. The game does seem to have a fairly decent balance between, like, the amount of resources you can have and hoard, versus, like, once you have a certain number of units up and running, it definitely slows your economy down, so that, like, if a player goes for, like, an early game rush and goes after you, their economy is suffering, so if they fail in that assault, they're basically economically, like, 30 minutes behind everybody else now, and it's going to be really difficult for them to recover. Just like Northgard, the game does seem to be balanced fairly well from what I've seen so far. I'm not, like, super angry about any of the ways that all of this has worked. Landsrad Council is going to be up in just a minute. We have +1 authority production because we've bought the Silence of the Spacing Guild, so that is good. It looks like through conquering territories, our hegemony has gone up a lot, and we are actually winning right now, except for the smugglers are kind of like hot on our trail, but I think we'll be all right. In the case of this territory over here, I need to make a plascrete factory, and I need to do it really badly, but we get +45 plascrete production for putting that over there, and so that's exactly what I'm going to do because that fixes one of my economic markers. With this right here, we'll have 304 by the next time it goes in, so I'm going to consider giving a lot more of our spice to the Chome in order to fix our Solari economy. That's fine. That's beautiful, and that should leave us with 245 by the time the next bribe goes through, which puts us a little bit ahead. The Landsrad Council vote is up. Basically, the way that this works is for different resolutions, you'll be doing different things. These are all universal resolutions. So what that means is if these resolutions pass, everybody has these problems. So I'm going to vote no on just about everything. And then with my 112 votes that I have up here, I'm going to throw like 80 votes at that, like 20 votes at that. Honestly, I'll actually throw the rest of my votes at that. I don't really care about the recruitment costs. I'm not planning on buying any units for right now. So I'll probably go with that right there. And then you've got 6 days until the vote and the resolutions are decided. But be aware of the fact that because we are the Fremen, we have much less influence on the council than, like, for example, the Atreides do, or the Harkonnens do. We're supposed to be playing the game effectively by unifying all of the Fremen tribes in order to face off against the Imperium. And the Imperium is trying to pacify us by trying to get ahead of us and stopping that from happening. These guys have no militia. I think I could probably drop a militia on this. In fact, I'll probably drop 2 of them. I'll probably put a ranged militia and a melee militia over here, because militia don't have upkeep. And so it's just nice to have your back covered in case things go wrong. We can't take over Harbu. I don't really want Harbu. I don't see the appeal of Harbu. It's got, like, bonuses to a resource that I don't really produce. But it looks like 30% of the village's plascrete production gets added as Solari production. So that's not terrible, but as you'll see, we're actually producing a lot of plascrete right now. And that plascrete production is actually quite good for us. Because that means we're going to be able to develop our economy very, very rapidly. I would recommend, I don't know if we actually need another harvesting team. The 50-50 split, that adds 2 more, so it'll raise our economy by 3.2. Let's wait on adding a worker until we really, really need to and the spacer's demands get too nasty. We can add another slot to this area, and I am tempted by that prospect. I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't know if you can put down multiples of the same building, But since this place is basically the center of our plascrete production, I think I was sort of thinking about putting a missile battery on it just to protect it and make sure that, like, it doesn't get rolled. But we'll wait and we'll see how much it gets hit, in all honesty. We could take over Harbu over here. It's an option. It'll buff up my economy a little bit. It's not great. I'd rather have Artless, but, you know. I guess we could take over Glatt. If we take over Glatt, that'll fix our... If we take over Glatt, that'll fix our money production. So let's go ahead and do that instead. We'll try to keep a contiguous territory rocking over here. Karwaz, they have more plascrete. Okay, good. Please stop stepping on the deadly sand that drains all of our chicken nuggies. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's get up here and we'll wipe out Glatt real quick. We'll take care of them. We don't have another agent just yet, but, aw, dude, how long has my research been done for? Oh, no. Okay, yeah, that was probably a mistake. That was probably a bad idea. We'll research composite materials real fast. We'll check that out real quick. What is this? Communication request. Do you expect us to sit here and watch while you appropriate every relevant resource in the region? Yep, that's exactly what I expect you to do, you turd. Voting ends right now, and so water regulation failed to pass. The diplomatic congress failed to pass, but troop inventories did pass. And you can actually see who voted on what by kind of going through and looking. And this is actually kind of an interesting mechanic that allows players to target players that are getting ahead and are winning. You can nerf their economies. You can nerf their militaries if they're being really aggressive. Like, there's some pretty interesting things that I think you can do with that system if you really think about it before you take your vote. All right, how's the wind up here, by the way? Wind 2? Okay, so it's not going to be good for moisture farming. But we will get a bunch of money out of controlling this territory, which I think is fantastic. Ikaz Envoys. A group of famous sculptors has settled in your city to get inspiration from the Arrakis landscape, and they want a patron. Take control of 2 villages for 200 hegemony, or get 1,000 Solari together, and that will give you 200 hegemony. Okay, we don't have to dedicate to any of that right now. It's not important. We are going to conquer this territory right here because I want access to the money fields because we've got a mine for plascrete, we've got resources being farmed over here, and now this will give us a big boost to our cash so that we can kind of readily and handily decide what we want to do next. So anyways, this is Dune Spice Wars. I like it so far. It's a simple, it's an easy-to-learn game that's modeled after Northgard. Like, you can definitely tell that Shiro started from the ground up with, okay, so we have this blueprint for how Northgard is designed, and everybody seems to love Northgard. And so, how can we take Northgard and make it more Dune-y? And honestly, I think they did an okay job with it. The game is in really early access. This is the first patch, but I've had 0 bugs. I've had 0 performance issues on my current rig. I've had no problems that are technical of any regard. The artwork is clean. The maps look good. They do like they look like what I envision Arrakis would look like in my head, with kind of the red sands interspersed with purple spice. You know what I mean? And so anyways, I think they've done a good job with this first build. My recommendation would be, this is not a 4X game, neither is it an RTS. It exists somewhere in between the space of those two things, and there are decisions to be made in this game. There is some replayability, and there are variables to fiddle around with on each of your playthrough. But, so really the question to ask yourself when deciding whether or not you want to jump into Dune Spice Wars is really did you like Northgard? Because Dune Spice Wars is effectively a refinement of the formula that Shiro developed for Northgard, which does away with the workers and gets a little bit more mechanically granular in other areas to make up for the micromanagement lost from cutting out the worker system and the general timeline of disasters of Northgard. I, for one, think most of the changes they've made are very astute, and I think Dune takes from the ideas of Northgard and kind of runs with them in a cool way. If you want an RTS or a pure 4X, this is not going to be that game. It's very much a hybrid between the two, and dabbles in both fields. I liked my time with it, and I'm looking forward to future updates, but like Northgard, it's not going to be a game for RTS or 4X diehard purists. It lacks kind of the micro of the former and like the macro of the latter, but what it does do is it blends something in between into a satisfying experience, and so I had fun with it. I will see you all later. My name is Splattercat. I sift through the pile to find what's worthwhile in the world of indie games every single day so that you don't have to. Today up on the chopping block, we had Dune Spice Wars. Tomorrow, we will have something else. Thank you for hanging out and giving me your attention, and hopefully I did a good job at justifying it. I'll see y'all tomorrow.